Faaria, thank you so much for being on the Lasangvi podcast. I really appreciate you taking out the time and joining us today. I want to start with a little bit about you. How did you get to being the founder of one of the most prestigious and most beautiful boutique hotels or boutique residences in Lahore? How did your journey kind of get you to here?
Okay, thank you, Ahmad, for having me on Dastan Koi. I don't know how you dig out people because it always amazes me how people not sitting in Pakistan manage to, sort of identify who they want to have conversations with. But a background on me, I think I grew up in a household. So originally from Quetta, born in Punjab, but brought up schooling all in Quetta and then in primary schooling in the US and then all over the country because my father was with the civil services. So I always grew up in households where my grandmother, my mother were very home proud people. So it was always about home, tradition, cultures. It was about learning from the West, but embracing your own traditions and doing it so beautifully and gracefully that people would be in awe as to why and how we were, so comfortable doing that and not like kind of being impressed with either the West or the Europeans. And we do have all those influences, all of us in the subcontinent, but it's just embracing more of our traditions than anything else. I think my own background, because we've never really had a permanent place for any time longer than probably 5 to 6 years because of
Wow.
a bus service. So we were moving from literally from DI Khan to Okara to Karachi, Lahore, Quetta, the US, everything all over. So I think that kind of brought an inbuilt passion for places, for cultures, and for people and meeting new people. So I think the backdrop of all of this was coming from that. Again, I think while growing up, the two emphases that we had in our household were always education, and the second one was travel. It was never about inheritances, properties, jewelry, clothes. It was always and always about travel, travel, travel. Educate yourself. Even in your travels, educate yourself. Even in your education, you should travel. So I think we grew up with that. And even though I'm a banker by profession, an ex-banker, 21 years of banking, 17 years of corporate, and about uh, 5 years of retail banking. But I chose to do this because when I traveled to Europe and I traveled to the East, I saw that people took real pride in their culture and their tradition, and they opened up and they revived these old homes, and they had these beautiful setups, which I was superbly keen to go and stay in, because they would always have some kind of a story, some kind of a tradition, some kind of an element that I would always feel was something that was special for me in that vacation, and not something that anybody could buy just because they had money and they could afford to stay in the luxury corporate hotels. So I think that was one of the reasons. And when my husband bought this property a few years ago, and he made the dire mistake of taking his wife and showing her the property, he said, you know what, I'm going to shift my office here, and I'm going to, build a commercial property on another property that he'd bought. And my reaction was, you can't do this. Just look at this house. How can you do this? Look at the construction, look at the design, look at the woodwork, look at this. He's like, okay, hold your horses, stop talking from emotions. This has to make sense. Why don't you do a business plan? And I said, sorry, I'm not going to do that. I know what I want. And he's like, well, this is stupidity. And he kind of brushed it away, and he's like, whatever. I think a year and a half later, again, I went to the house for some odd reason, and he had one of his calligraphers and sitting there and working on his calligraphies, which my husband loves to have calligraphies commissioned on the works of his grandfather or Maulana Room or the Quran Pak. So I saw the gentleman sitting there, and I said, you know, that house is being wasted. There's one gentleman, he's literally dumped all his stuff, and the house is going. He said, well, what do you want to do? I said the same thing I said a year and a half ago. He's like, but what about the business plan? I said, okay, let's make a deal. You hand over the property. I will invest my life savings and I will do this, but that's where the business plan lies. He's like, you must be crazy. Do you realize this is an old and this is a property that belongs to the 1950s, so it's approximately 75 years old. Beautifully constructed, no credit to us. The structure is solid, 15 inches thick walls. The woodwork is stunning, no credit to us. I think some of the things were so well thought through that I think we just inherited a gem, and not inherited, but we bought a gem and got lucky with it. And then I started working with it. And what I do was, I was working at the bank at that point, and in the 6 in the evening, I'd come to the site. I'd sit with the contractors till about 2 in the morning. And by contractors, I mean directly with the labor, not a middleman. So if it was the masoner, I would be sitting with him. If it was the plumber, I'd be sitting with him. If it was a carpenter, the polisher, the paint works, literally from the vanities of the bathrooms, I sat and I sketched the designs. And then there are challenges with old properties. So, so all of that just came through. And I think it was more of me wanting to do it rather than anything else. So sorry for going like all over the place
I love it.
with the answer.
I love it. It truly shows like जहाँ से आपने शुरू किया, traveling around Pakistan and embodying the different cultures and the different stories from your grandparents to the way you were raised, to then all of this starts to make sense when you look at Wusaaq then, right? Because it truly is Faria, embodied in a place in that sense. Um, in all of the stories, in all of the travels, and in the way people are hosted. I think it's beautiful, and thank you for that long answer, because it kind of summed up a lot of the questions that I had to begin with. But that's beautiful. So अब मुझे इसके बारे में थोड़ा सा बताएं कि you didn't have any background in architecture or in design. It was all just the experiences and the stories that you were coming up with from growing up and traveling around. क्योंकि जब ज़्यादातर लोग, like when you're traveling and you keep being moved from place to place, दो तरीके होते हैं लोगों के. या तो you become very extroverted and you're able to meet people and able to kind of judge कर सकते हैं उनके experiences, उनकी learnings, उनकी जो कहानियां हैं, the way of being, or you become very introverted and you're like, I don't know how to talk to people, and I don't know how to interact, and I don't know how to kind of absorb everything that is there for me. And it's very difficult. I personally am not a big fan of moving around too much. I've moved a little bit in my life, but it's always difficult to be able to recreate who you are and your social circle and your surroundings and what you like. But on the other end, when I travel, and I go, and I refuse to go for like anything less than a couple of weeks, because I feel like it's like I've come in this state of mind where like anything less than a month is, you don't get to experience the place, you don't get to experience the people, you don't get to experience the environment and the culture of a place. So how do you bring all of what you've kind of gained from experiences growing up? And I loved also जो आपने बात करी थी in terms of, look at the West and see their stories and see how you can build a bridge, which I really do think that Wusaaq is that bridge as well, between the East and the West, because it makes people understand, what Eastern cultures and the richness of Eastern cultures and the art and everything else that you kind of embody, and you take, and showcase so beautifully the importance of that for you. How do you do that on a daily basis with a place like Wusaaq?
Well, I think let's begin with the meaning of Wusaaq, and then that explains how and why we do it. So Wusaaq is a name that my husband came up with. I wanted him to think of a name, and he took this name out of a poem by Allama Iqbal, which actually speaks about a home in paradise where there is a canopy of trees and where friends gather under the canopy of trees to meet and to sit and to enjoy one another's company. And I just thought it was just meant to be, because this house has a courtyard in the back which has a canopy of fruit trees with birdsong. And we literally sit outdoors, and it's always about friends getting together, whether it's guests or it's friends. It's always under the canopy or in the courtyard. So I think that was the natural. Somehow the energy, the vibes, they were given. It was just, I was one of, I mean, I was lucky that I was given this opportunity. I had a husband who was very, very encouraging in terms of not interfering, giving me a free hand, saying, okay, need to know what you're doing and go ahead and just do it. I don't have a background on it, but, traveling over the years did teach me to adjust. One of the funny things is that in my report card in school, I always used to get good grades, but I always used to get a comment, very talkative. My mother used to say, you know, she just doesn't like in a car, she'd say, chup kar jao. And I used to be a baby. And she used to tell me the story that I'd say, bhains guzri, tota guzra,
I
chidiya
remember, I
guzri.
remember
So my
those
mother
days.
was like, my God, no wonder. So, there's this joke that if my father always used to say, agar isko, she's deserted on an island, trust me, we need to be prepared that she's going to bring the entire island habitats back with her. And there's going to be a party going because this is just her. So I think um, moving from place to place, I found it a lot of fun because I got to meet new friends. And the most exciting bit would be how my mother's going to set up the new home. So I'd always be
Right.
like,
Okay.
watching that. The thing is, I've been raised by my grandmother. So I was 2 months old. I was given to her, and I've been raised in Quetta. So while my father was posted all over, my mother was a pediatrician by profession. My elder brother would be traveling with them. I was stationed in Quetta. It's only when my father went to the US and we were there for 4 years that I traveled with them, came back, went back to Quetta, and then was with my parents in Karachi, Islamabad once my grandmother passed away. So I haven't done that much of shifting, but I've done substantially a lot. But it's always been a lot of fun. And I think I was at an age where I could watch my mother set up the house, enjoy her going for upholstery shopping. And she was a pediatrician, so she was no nonsense. Like in the morning, she'd work. She wouldn't run an evening private clinic or anything. In the evenings, she was devoted to the family. So it was all about entertaining. And my parents were great entertainers. So, open house dinners, parties, khadda kebabs in Karachi. Parties would start at 10, would finish at 6 in the morning. We would have our exams. They'd be like, well, you have to study and come to that level and then, participate. So I've grown up in a household, which is in my grandmother's house was an open house. Everyone would come. Then luckily, my in-laws, my mother-in-law and father-in-law were great entertainers. So their home was always an open home where, the family would converge, friends would converge, evenings would happen. So I think I've been very blessed. I've never had that, silos upbringing. It was always about adjusting, cousins coming in, mattresses being put into the bedrooms, room sharing, meals always being extended family,
Feeling of
friends coming
community.
in. So it's always been community. So I think that came naturally. और फिर जब हमने जब ये सारा बचपन देखा और देखा कि अब्बू का फोन आता था ऑफिस से कि जी गुल रात को माय लेट मदर नेम इज गुल नैयर कहते गुल रात को फलाना फलाना आ रहा है तो हम कोई मतलब 14-15 लोग होंगे एंड मैं सेकंड्स पे देखती थी कि अम्मी वुड ऑर्गेनाइज शी'd have immaculately laid out buffet. She knew crockery, रात का डिनर सेट के क्या पैटर्न्स होते हैं, आफ्टरनून डिनर सेट. So my mother's greatest, I think, material fetish was crockery. And she's got over about 25 odd, sets, and they're divided between breakfast, lunch, and dinner with matching linen and tablecloths and, accessories and whatnot. And I think that is what kind of, got me excited about all of this. So I think Wusaaq was an opportunity to showcase what I'd learned over the years, actively and passively, through the travels. And because, like I said, travel was a big high, my Rotary scholarship on vocational training for banking and finance was from Bavaria, Germany.
Yeah.
So again, and then every time I would save up some money, it would always be about traveling. So my husband and I, we did our honeymoon in Syria. We were there for 14 days. So Damascus, Aleppo, Homs, Palmyra, all the places that are now practically inaccessible, either because they're destroyed or not. And this is the opportunity that's great, because I remember my mother saying, go to Syria. And I was like, why? And I remember crying in Aleppo and calling her and saying, this is not a honeymoon, this is a Hajj moon, because every place we're going has so many, um, so many individuals of religious elevation and level buried there कि मतलब ठीक है मैंने हजरत बिलाल रज़ी अल्लाह ताला के shrine पे जाना था वहाँ फातिहा पढ़नी थी, but everywhere we'd go my husband would find shrines and we would just go and say Hazri. And I said, why? She said, you'll remember this. And I remember it to date, how beautiful. We stayed on the ruins in Palmyra in a tent, which was absolutely beautiful. The bazaar, the souk in Aleppo that has been bombed, we stayed right across that. Just the cultures. I mean, similarly, you talk about Morocco, you talk about Spain, you talk about Portugal, Syria, you talk about the Far East, you've got Sri Lanka, you've got Burma, you've got, India has done so much in terms of history and culture and heritage. ठीक है लड़ाइयाँ अपनी जगह और नाराजगियाँ अपनी जगह, but the good lessons are there to learn. 100%. We had a common history, we had a common heritage, whatever the religious differences, but they have managed to preserve their, palaces, their monuments. They've opened them up for tourism. Ours is a long journey yet. The Jeffrey Bhava properties in Sri Lanka are stunning, mind-boggling. The riads in Morocco, unbelievable. The places we stayed, 100 hectares of covered Medinas from the 2nd century to the 9th century. Every riad has a history in itself. So I was just with Wusaaq, I just wanted that, we are so rich in our culture and history. Somebody should be able to say that in Pakistan, you have at least one place that has started this. And I hope that people pick up from it. And I hope that people copy Wusaaq and make much better versions of Wusaaq, because no matter how many of these we have across the country, they won't be enough. I think Gujranwala has beautiful architecture of its own. Gujarat has its own. Karachi has beautiful structures. Sialkot le le, Rawalpindi le le. Purana mid-century pre-partition, revive those properties. Whoever owns it, even in Lahore model town, stunning properties. But people just don't. It's easier to scrap it. Malba girao, bech do, modern building banao, fantastic floor to roof. Windows bana lo, modern accessories kar do, Dubai zindabad, Thailand zindabad, create 2 great Buddhas at the entrance, think you're in, and I have nothing against that. I mean, I think they look beautiful. I just am obsessed with our culture, so I just feel that we can.
I love that, and it's very important. Na, jo aap kar rahe hain, it's actually extremely important. You're preserving a part of history. You're letting people come and experience that. And also the sense of community job jiski baat kari thi, of entertaining, of being storytellers yourselves. Actually, ek cheez maine aapse puchni thi, there's a very beautiful story that you relate to me when we first had a talk, where I think it was the first people that came to Wusaaq, and you had to run and go and greet them when it was like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. I'd love for people to hear that story, because it tells a lot about who Faaria is as well.
Oh, that was I think it's insanity. So Faaria is insanity mixed with absolute adventure. But I think when the first guests came, I remember they had a 3:30 Emirates flight and they were arriving, and I remember getting up in the middle of the night and I had this alarm clock on, and I got up to rush out, and I said to my husband, and he says, where are you off to? I said, I'm going to Wusaaq. He said, what for? I said, there are guests coming. He said, what? You're going there, so guests are coming, you have staff there. I said, Iqbal, that's not the concept of Wusaaq. Wusaaq is home. If we had guests coming here right now, would you not get up to greet them? He said, yes, but my wife is going to go at 3:30 in the morning to greet random people. I said, to her home. So that's the thing. And he just looked at me and said, well, I'm telling you, you're going to, this is crazy and this is insane, and we'll talk about it in the morning. Anyways, I went, I settled them in, came back. In the morning, I was getting ready again. And he's like, where are you off to now? I said, well, breakfast overseeing. He's like, what? you're going to be standing and overseeing breakfast for random strangers. I said, Iqbal, right now I'm not your wife. I'm not the banker. I'm not your wife. I'm not someone's daughter. This is work for me. These people have been promised a certain, experience. And if they don't get it, how are we different from any other commercial entity that just gives itself up to managers? And of course, because of the scale, they give themselves up, not because they prefer to do that. It's a different business model. And I think slowly and steadily he realized, and he got used to the 2 a.m. wake ups and the 1 a.m. wake ups and the 6 o'clock mornings and the evening welcomes. And by now he's like in the middle of his sleep. In the third year, he now says, "Yes, Sari, chi." And I just say, "Khuda Hafiz." And then I come back and he's like, "Aa gaye khairiyat se," and that's it. So yeah, I think I hats off to him. I think my strength in my life has been truly my mother and my father, of course, together, my brothers, and above all, I think, well, or not above all, but not any less, my husband, because he's absolutely been very, very encouraging in this entire madness that I've taken up.
I love that. I mean, I love, like when you said that, it just put like a massive smile on my face, because it shows the person that you are. Like it exemplifies Wusaaq as well, right? Because Wusaaq at the end of the day is you. I mean, बहुत खूबसूरत building
But
है,
I want
सब
to
है,
add
लेकिन
something here, Ahmad, because Wusaaq would not be complete without me sharing that with you. So when I was doing Wusaaq, I had recently lost my mother, and I lost her very suddenly. And she was 68. So Wusaaq is a tribute to my mother. Her name was Gulnayar. So every room is named after a flower. So we have 5 rooms and then 2, communal rooms. So the rooms go from Gule Nehmi, Gule Bahar, Gule Daudi, Gule Nargis, Gule Wafa, Gulab, and Gul Mohar. And they're all a tribute to her.
beautiful.
And when I was setting up the house, since I didn't have her around, and I was, struggling between breaking down on days and trying to do this and thinking, what would she have done? Would she have used this color? Would she have done that? And I think the loss was so recent that so an angel came, a very, very dear friend, Angeles Espino Rashid, who commonly known, or more affectionately known as Angie Rashid. She was like a friend who was like a friend, a mother, a confidant, introduced to me by my husband. She would make beautiful frames for his calligraphies, and she made beautiful furniture, and she does make furniture to date under the brand name of Darkin. I started talking to her, and I would take my mood boards to her, and she knew that I'd lost my mother, and she was very close to me on that call. So every time I take a mood board, she'd look at it and she says, "Perfect." And she'd like literally I'd get a sign off. And there were 2-3 things that she changed in the overall scheme. Like I wanted flowing curtains. She said, "Nothing doing. We're going to put invisible blinds, Spanish blinds." I wanted like a bar in the kitchen. She said, "Nothing doing. We're going to have an island with stools with leather on it." So every piece in Wusaaq, every room in Wusaaq has a piece by Angie's brand, Darkin, but everything in Wusaaq has an angelic, creative overview by her. And she's been standing by me through every step. Like she will ask every week, "How many guests do you have? Is it going well? Is there anything?" And now with the makeover, because she spends 6 months a year in Spain, and 6 months in Pakistan. So now with her about to leave in May, we're trying to expedite as much of the things as we can. So a lot of stuff has been done, but it's hidden. So when you asked earlier on if I was at Wusaaq, I couldn't be at Wusaaq because it's literally bare walls, lots of furniture piled up, upholstery here, stuff there. So it's just madness right now. You'll probably see it in a month and a half, and because we're hoping to open inshallah, in the first week of June now. We're closed till the end of May.
Okay.
For all the renovations and the makeover. And so Angie deserves a special thing because she's been my guiding light in the absence of my mother. And secondly, it's because of her that we had the Spanish connection, and the Spanish ambassador to Pakistan, Carlos Morales, not the current one, but his predecessor, inaugurated Wusaaq on the 2nd of Feb 2018. And the current ambassador, Manuel Duran, he re-endorsed the Spanish, sort of patronage of Wusaaq. And I think it's been amazing. We hosted a number of mats, an array of expats, royals from the UAE. We've hosted a lot of our own, Pakistanis settled abroad. And it's been such a great experience. We've learned along the way. We've learned a lot of things because I was never in hospitality. I didn't know a lot of things we would get feedback on. A lot of things people would say, my God, are you sure you want? I mean, in the beginning, people would say, are you sure you know how many artworks you have here? These smaller ones can just go into my handbag. And I would always be like, Wusaaq is a concept जिसमें हमेशा referral दोस्तों का या family का होगा. तो अगर मेरे दोस्त या family गलत हैं, तो फिर आगे से रहने वाला गलत होगा, तो फिर शायद चीज चोरी हो जाएगी. तो I mean, I know कि जब लोग आते थे और वसाक देखते थे, शुरू में जब हमने इसकी opening की, and at the inauguration we had like 140 people, wine, hors d'oeuvres. People were like, are you mad? I mean, vintage carpets, upholsteries collected Uzbekistan se kya, to Syria se kya, to Morocco se kya, all over. My mother's old crockery, my mother-in-law's vintage carpets. People said, are you mad? ये तो हम अपने घरों में चीजें रखते हैं. You're opening this up to strangers. And I was like, please, it constantly just go back to the meaning of Wusaaq. A home in paradise, a home where you welcome your friends under a canopy of trees. How can I detach from that home and make it a cookie cutter place? And yes, things will break and things might get damaged, but I'm willing to take that risk because I know with the model we've got going here, with the kind of referral based guests that we accept, we'll be okay. So thoda bahut hua, lekin if people were expecting probably on a scale of 1 to 10 damages to the degree of about 9, I think our damages have been less than 1.
That's beautiful.
Because people have loved it. People have embraced it. We have certain policies which people find difficult, but then they're okay. It's an adult-only property, no children, because the wiring is a bit low. It's dangerous. The architecture has low terrace, edges. Also, because a lot of the artwork and the sculptures inside are not child friendly. So we just avoid that. Secondly, it's a no smoking indoors. A lot of locals always want to smoke in their rooms. So I think we don't get that clientele. We don't do meal service because if I was staying at your house, Imad, I wouldn't be asking your cook to give me food in my bedroom. We don't have mini bars, telephones, or a bell in the room. Why? Because you're in your home. There's a kitchen, there's a minimal staff. They're there for housekeeping. So, yes, we've learned a lot of things along the way. Like a lot of the clientele we can't cater to because they always want to smoke in their room. They want room service. They want the staff to be literally serving them. And the staff's not there for that. The staff at Wusaaq is like family. They're there for housekeeping and they enjoy the space as much as the guests do. They're not there to do servicing. They lay out beautiful lunches and dinners in the alfresco dining. But the idea is not to make them run your personal errands. It's about making the home comfortable for your stay. They do chai, they do stuff, but they're not there literally as somebody you can boss around. They actually turn around and say, Bibi, ye wo hame keh rahe the, to humne nahi kiya. And I was like, oh no. And then I deal with it, which is fine.
That's beautiful. Faaria, I have one more question for you. Which is no, I can go on for an hour. Like if आपकी कोई call होगी तो फिर मैं मसला हो जाएगा ना. That's why I'm like, okay, I want to sit down and learn all of this stuff from you because I think you're like
I'm not going to give you any more information until you come to Wusaaq and you experience it yourself, and that'll obviously be after June because before that, don't come to Wusaaq. It's chaos.
अभी तो Lahore में lockdowns भी हुए हैं, so that's why we're in Islamabad right now. So we've moved to Islamabad. We're like still waiting on when Lahore will be opened up. But yeah, we've been in Islamabad for like a month now.
So you have to come to Wusaaq.
100%. Last question for you is 3 experiences that have changed you as a person the most.
With Wusaaq?
You as a person. It could be Wusaaq, it could be anything.
I think losing my mother. I think a part of me just doesn't exist anymore. I just, I'm sorry. I think I can't ever get used to not having her around. So I am a changed person. I think mothers make you very carefree. They make you a princess. Even when they don't make you a princess, they're constantly telling you how you need to perfect yourself. But I think losing my mother, definitely. My elder brother lives in the US, having him far away, always missing him, and trying to balance, not like being a little baby and crying. My younger brother's here, which is great because I don't have kids, and it's like he's my child. So he's constantly bichara. Also at times he's like, Appa, seriously, like, can you not do this right now? I was like, okay. But other than that, I think the other thing that changed me greatly was professionally, moving away from corporate banking into retail banking. Corporate banking is a very prestigious job. It connects you with the outer world in terms of your clientele, and it makes you excel with the best of the best in terms of, um, you're dealing with corporate entities, you're dealing with big numbers, you're dealing with grand lifestyles, you're dealing with very, very sort of, let's say, very corporate profile. And then I shifted to retail banking for 5 years. And I remember the then president of the bank asked me, he said, you can't do retail banking, you're cut out for corporate. And I was like, no, but I want to do retail. And I remember he refused me a job while I was in corporate. And then I left corporate banking and then went back to him and said, now I'm no longer there. Sorry, I had left corporate. I went to him, he said, no, you're a corporate banker, you can't do retail banking. And then I got another job with corporate. And then I went to him and I said, I have a job in corporate right now. Now I want a job in retail. And he said, you're mad. And I joined that, and it taught me how to then work with teams, work with people. Because retail is it's a very different madness. Um, I don't want to be harsh, but a lot of the people in branch banking are kind of, forced to stay in their regions and their positions over time, and their ability to grow is fairly limited. But those that do it brilliantly. But I was in awe of the fact that in corporate, you're always giving out money, you're lending. In retail, you're always asking people to deposit their money with you. And I have been perpetually over the 5 years in awe of all the branch managers, all the branch staff that would bring in the deposit, saying, how do they do this? How do they, ask someone to give money? Then the person trusts them. And then every month, they keep their numbers up and they keep going and they go brilliantly well. And it taught me how to work internally within the bank rather than externally. How to work with people who came from very varied backgrounds, because you have a branch that's in Lahore in Kent, you have a branch that's on the outskirts in Chadra, then you have a branch that's in Kamuki. So working with the local banks, even though I worked with ANZ, Standard Chartered, Habib, UBL and Bank Al Falah, I worked with the locals and I worked with the foreign banks. But honestly, जो retail के अंदर complexities है ना, वो corporate में नहीं है. Corporate is really, you have to, it's a prestigious position. In retail, it's wow, it's an achiever's game, I think. And I'm still in awe of people who do retail banking. Corporate bankers will hate me, but sorry guys.
Yeah, in corporate, you're also in that bubble sort of thing, right? Like you're not dealing
Of
with
course.
the day to day जो आप लोगों को देखते हो कि दिन में जो effects आ रहे हैं, जो लोगों के जो like कोई किनकी आमदन क्या है, that completely changes you for sure.
Imad, you're talking about Manolos and you're talking about,
Yeah.
brands, and you're talking about stilettos and cocktails, and you're talking about billion dollar syndications and you know, it's all a different game. You're flying to meet your customers here and there. You've got these, you know, international, you know, trips and offsites. And in retail, suddenly you're talking about, nahi ji, lakh rupe wala deposit bhi matter karta hai. And, you know, this guy, he comes in, he comes on a bike, he puts off his helmet, and he's a branch manager, and he's the best performing branch manager. Like, what the hell? I mean, we have all the luxuries, and hum samajhte hain humne तीर मारा, तीर ये मार रहे हैं और निशाने पे लग रहा है. So 17 years of corporate banking, loved it. If anyone asks me to go back into banking, sorry guys, that's not happening. But I totally respect and salute all the retail bankers out there. I think Wusaaq has been a game changer for me in terms of how much I'm loving doing this. I think I would want to create some kind of a model around Wusaaq where I'm able to take more properties and renovate them, restore them, and run them. Because that experience, I think, is all about giving back to the community, letting people their heritage, not tearing it down, and then taking pride in, you know, opening up their homes the way their parents would have opened it up and others would. So I think that's an experience that I really, really want to grow in.
Faaria, it's been so lovely getting to hear more about the story of Wusaaq and the story of you. So thank you so much for taking the time. I am super, super grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for, I don't know, identifying, selecting, choosing me. But I think if anything at all, I think Wusaaq is for everyone. And I mean, anyone out there who has this sort of a property, no matter how small it is, no matter how remote it is, please try and preserve it. It's, I mean, it takes very little. Just put a room on Airbnb, clean up a room and put it on Airbnb and make that the part of your culture. But thank you, Ahmad. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
And I look forward to seeing you in Lahore.
Yes, 100%.